official.
Awesome. Okay. And if we can start, also turn on the transcript, that would be great.
You got it. Closed captioning has been turned on.
Awesome. All right. So, hello, everyone. Oh, 1 second. Okay. I'm ready now. Sorry. Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us. Thanks for joining this SDXD event for the power of networking, a discussion on cultivating meaningful connections to develop your career. This event is hosted by SDXD, San Diego Experience Design Professionals Network. My name is Antonio. I'm the president, and we're a community of over 5,300 practitioners, UX practitioners across the world who gather regularly to connect, inspire, and learn. I would like to give a shout out to my fellow board members. It's been great collaborating with you guys through this event and previous events. All the logistics and all the brainstorming makes all this events possible. So thank you to Ben, Melissa, and of course, James. And you might remember James as a previous president of SDXD back in 2019 and 2020, 2021. He carried SDXD through the pandemic, transitioning from in-person to online. He also rose our meetup members from 3,000 to 5,300 today. So thanks, James, for joining us. We really like having you here. It's great to have you back in SDXD. And I would like to also thank our volunteers. So for this event and future events, we've been collaborating with a couple of great volunteers. They've also helped us with logistics and brainstorming and all the behind the scenes busy work that makes these events possible. So thank you to Elizabeth, Ray, CJ, and Darren. And if you're interested in volunteering, this is a great segue for our Slack. So SDXD has a Slack. There we post about future events. We also have job postings. We have discussions. All the board members are there. Volunteers are there. If you're interested in volunteering, you can reach out to us personally, and we'll try to respond as quickly as possible. And so we'll put the link in the chat for that SDXD Slack channel right there. Now, for our website. So we do have a website, little known fact. We did a revamp not too long ago, and it's a great place to not only learn about SDXD and future events, but also volunteering and potentially sponsors and maybe speaking opportunities. So I'll hand it off to Ben to talk a bit about sponsorship opportunities for SDXD.
Thanks, Antonio. Hey, I'm Ben. And yeah, we're always looking for sponsors to help us grow and learn and just fulfill this mission we have at SDXD. So if you're interested in sponsoring in any way, or a company might be, easiest way is if you go to the website and just go over to /sponsor, and we can start a conversation from there. So yeah, I'd love to talk to you. You can also just reach out to me directly on that Slack channel as well. Back to you, Antonio.
Awesome. Thank you, Ben. Yeah, and next up we have our upcoming event, and I'll hand it off to James to tell you a bit about that.
Appreciate it. Yes, it's going to be another instant classic, super fun. What is Cozy Juicy Real? Building deeper connections disguised as a board game. That's right. Our favorite facilitators, Jed and Sophia, are back to present an online board game with a very ungame-like purpose to kindle fun and cultivate connections through conversation. So come on by. We'll put the link in the chat, and it's a wonderful, wonderful way to make some new friends.
Awesome. Thank you, James. Yeah, and played that board game in the past. It's a lot of fun, so really recommend it. It's going to be a good one. Okay, so now up to the main event. For some reason, this is showing more than it should. 1 second. Here we go.
A little behind the scenes.
All right. Yeah, behind the scenes. Yeah, all the busy work. Okay, so for our event agenda, right after this, we'll have the panel, of course. During the panel, we'll have a link in the chat to introduce, if you have any questions during the chat. We also took your questions from the meetup sign up, and we'll do our best to talk about those themes. But yes, if you have any questions within there, we have a link that I'll explain for in a second. And we also have a quick speed networking activity that'll be lots of fun, a good opportunity to meet people and maybe put some things you learned to the test, well, to practice. And yes, so if you have any, if you want to ask any questions during the panel, you can use this link that will also drop in the chat, or this QR code. And it's this great app called Slido, and you can put the questions and people can upload them so we can see what everybody's interested in while we do the panel. All right, so now to the main event, our panel and our moderator. So I'm really excited to introduce this moderator. Tina is a great friend. She's been a part of the UX community and the San Diego SCXD for a while now. It's always great to collaborate with her, and it's always really fun to hang out. And so really excited to introduce her. Tina is an enterprise UX research professional with experience in digital customer experience design and customer rollout. She's an advocate for users and serves as a trusted advisor and thought leader for products and design teams. And Tina thrives when faced with new challenges and believes through cross-functional collaboration and user engagement, we can successfully produce the best user experience and win as a team for the customers and for potentially your business. So Tina, really excited to have you. Thank you so much for doing this, and I'll hand it off to you.
Well, thank you. Thanks, Antonio. I'm glad to be here. Here's a little bit more about me. Currently, I am at ServiceNow, and I'm a senior manager of UX research and customer insights. And before that, I worked at Oracle and ADP, the paycheck company. And I have degrees in human resources and in business. And as I already alluded to in the chat, I am Canadian. You'll probably hear it in my voice now. And I like ice skating. I'm a basketball mom and a tennis mom. And every morning I like it to start with a great cup of coffee. So if you like coffee, let me know with some emojis, and feel free to throw in emojis as we're having this conversation today, and anything in the chat and in the Slido. Well, let's meet our panelists. So if we can just go to the next slide. We've got 4 amazing panelists tonight: Darren, Tara, Ben, and Marcy. So let's meet them. I'm going to kind of introduce you to each one of them. First, we have Marcy, and Marcy is the owner of Marcy Brown Photography, and she's a contemporary portrait photographer, and she specializes in personal branding portraits. And really her goal is to up-level entrepreneurs when it comes to their image. One of the things that's super interesting is she is a certified green business. And as a cat mom and a lover of things outdoors, I think when we met earlier, Marcy, you said you were mountain biking. Can you tell us a little bit more about your last adventure?
Oh, sure. So I am married to a high school teacher. So that means, and I work for myself. So that means I can take all summer off. So we just spent the summer in Canada, speaking of Canada, whoop, whoop, and we went mountain biking up in British Columbia. So that's the kind of stuff I love to do.
And that's great mountain biking area, I know from past experience. So that is awesome. Welcome, Marcy. Next slide, and we have Darren. If somebody can get us to the next slide, we have a nice little slide for Darren. And Darren is a human factors researcher at Tandem Diabetes Care. And he's a UX researcher. He's been working at different places in San Diego. He's worked at a design consultancy and at a startup, and now he's at Tandem. And, he describes himself as a shy introvert. So we're going to get that kind of perspective from him on our networking conversation on maybe tips that he's learned along the way. And he enjoys making a great cup of espresso at home. I think, we're going to click for sure. And also hosts game nights at his house. And I think, what was the last game night you did, Darren?
Yeah, I played Machi Koro 2. It's a great game, very unknown. But we played last weekend with some friends. It was a good time.
Sounds great. Sounds great. Well, if anybody knows that game, please mention it in the chat. So on the next slide, or in the next panelist we have is Ben Holland Arlen. Ben also works at ServiceNow, and believe it or not, we have not met in person yet. So hopefully that can happen. We're both in San Diego as well. And he's a seasoned designer with more than 10 years of experience, spanning from startups to agencies, nonprofits, and enterprise companies. And he loves to solve those gnarly, complex problems. And you can find him nerding out on music, exploring the world on foot or bike. And he has a dog named Willis. And then you also have a wife and son. What's your son's name, Ben?
My son's name is Harrison.
Nice. And then, if we look at the fun fact for Ben, Richard Branson convinced you to get into tech. We got to dig into that. Can you tell us more?
Yeah, so as it says in the slide, in a previous life, I was a DJ and music programmer at XM Radio, and I happened to be doing a live event at a Virgin Music festival, and actually ran into him twice. If you go to the next slide, I can show you, twice in the same day. First time is on the right is actually, it looks later, but it's actually earlier in the day. And I just walked up to him talking about networking and asked if he would record a drop for the channel I worked in. And sure enough, he said, this is Richard Branson, and you're listening to XM80 The Move, which became then heard every 30 minutes for the rest of the weekend on our concert. The second time was much later, and as you may be able to tell from Richard's look, much more into the beverages. But basically, I told him how I had an opportunity to move to San Francisco, and I was really interested in getting into tech, but I was also really nervous and not sure if it was a good idea. And basically, well, the exact words I'll paraphrase, but he basically said, F it, what's the worst thing that can happen? And 20 minutes later, I found my boss. I told him I'm going to quit and move to San Francisco. And a month later, I moved out there from DC, Washington, DC, where I was living, and started my life in tech. And the rest is history.
That's great. And that's like a wonderful networking story. Love it.
Yeah,
Love
don't be afraid to walk up to strangers, no matter who they are. They might say no, but you never know, as you can see from these two pictures.
Totally. And life-changing advice. So next slide, we've got Tara Jensen. She also works at ServiceNow, and she's a staff employee designer at ServiceNow. And she has over a decade of experience working in design in the speech tech industry, in the DoD, and in enterprise. She's an expert in networking. If you don't know, she was one of the past presidents of this very organization, SDXD. And she started her career in graphic communication. And Tara, you always have Post-its and Sharpies in your purse?
Always kind of originates, I think, from the president role, always got to be ready for a brainstorm, but they're very useful in multiple situations. So I use them for splitting checks. It works really well for that. But I also use them a lot with my nieces to play all sorts of like random games like Head Buddy Feet, or we do a lot of like very low fidelity board game design together, or maybe like pixel art or something like that. So they're always fun for like, they're useful in so many different ways.
That is awesome. So UX, I love it. Well, so these are our amazing panelists. Let's start some of the questions. So just to start the discussion, Ben, what do you define networking as, and what does it mean to you?
I mean, at a super high level, it's talking to someone you don't know and getting to know them. You might have some sort of purpose, like you're looking for a job, but like for me, I just like to talk to people, learn, grow, and go from there. Try not to make it like too much of a pressured situation.
That's great. Marcy, how about you? Do you have a sort of a definition of networking, what it means to you?
Sure. Well, when I network, I do with the intention of either meeting people I don't know or really going deeper with people that I already do know. I do a lot of networking as part of my marketing, and I'm at a networking event at least once a week. So I'm out there a lot, and I just define it as really being intentional about getting out there and meeting people. And so whatever that intention is for you, like Ben was saying, that's what you're there to do.
That's great. Darren or Tara, do you have anything to add on what networking means to you?
Yeah,
Go ahead, Darren. You take it away.
sure. I'll say what it isn't. It doesn't have to be. I think it doesn't have to be this icky or transactional thing that sometimes people think of when they think of networking. I think networking can be this thing where you have personal connections and you provide warmth while also gaining something professionally. I've had a lot of friends that have gone from networking, and I'm volunteering with XDXD right now, and I think those connections are great, but also just a good time with great people.
Love that. That's great.
Yeah, to kind of build on that, yeah, I just kind of see it as, a great way to find mentors or other people to kind of that you can even help. And it can be an avenue to get a job, but I think that's just one small benefit that you can get from it. The big pieces are really like the growth opportunities that you get from learning from different people, and maybe even just finding the right career path that you might not have expected. So there's just so much you can get out of it.
That's great. Well, when we were planning the panel earlier, I was just saying that one of my networking stories, or one of my best networking stories, is back in 2001, when I was early in my career. I was working on a project. I was working at Oracle at the time. And for 6 months, I worked on this project with this other team. And we completed the project. We worked together as a team. And I never worked with that team again, but I kind of kept in touch with some of those people. And then, almost like 20 years later, I wanted to move back to San Diego. I wanted to work at ServiceNow. And I went to LinkedIn one morning and I saw that one of those people that was on that project with me almost 20 years ago had posted a job at ServiceNow that fit my qualifications. And so I DM'd this person that I hadn't talked to for so long. And anyway, I didn't know at the time, but he was a director at ServiceNow and his manager was actually hiring the position. And I was basically bumped up, in the list, and I got introduced to the manager, and, kind of the rest is history. So that's one of my great networking stories, with just what you would call kind of a weak connection. I would love to hear, maybe Marcy, if you could start it off, like, what is one of your best networking stories?
I have a ton of examples I could offer, but I think kind of just to bring it up to a high level version of the answer to that question, I moved to San Diego about 9 years ago and so I left a corporate career and decided to take a side hustle and make it a full-time job. And so I knew about 4 people here. So 9 years later, I can attribute my business of about at least half of it comes from actively networking. And so I treat it really seriously, and I get a lot of amazing clients through networking. And just because I'm consistent and I show up to the same groups a lot, I'm not scattered all over the place. I'm really consistently developing relationships. So I have a lot of great stories. I'll just share one, literally the most recent one. I was at a networking group for this environmental group in San Diego, and I met a woman and I was like, oh, I need what you do. She does product photography and I photograph people. So I said, oh, I could refer to you. So I came to her with kind of a giving. I said, oh, I want your card. Give it to me. I need to refer to you. And then later that day, she referred me to her husband, who is a CFO at a company. And I put a bid in for a job there. So that's just how this works.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, does Darren, Tara, or Ben, do you have a networking story that you can tell? You've got yours with Richard, but if there's more, Ben, I'd love to hear.
Yeah, so I mean, just sort of the lesson that you never know when opportunity will strike. I had an opportunity when I was living in New York a while back to interview for a job in the New York Times. And as luck in retrospect would have it, one of the interviewers couldn't be there. And so I ended up meeting him a couple days later for coffee. And we had a very informal conversation where he basically told me that I was coming from a job at the New York Public Library where I left because I didn't like the heavy bureaucracy. And he basically told me it was going to be as bad or worse at the New York Times. And I wouldn't probably be very happy. And then we continued to talk. And by the end of the conversation, he's like, listen, dude, to be frank, I'm planning on leaving here, but let's definitely stay in touch. I think that we might have some opportunities to work together in the future. About a year later, he messaged me out of the blue. I'd almost forgotten about him, but we connected on LinkedIn for a job at a startup he was at. And, honestly, it wasn't a great fit. But then 2 years after that, I did a lot of freelancing in my early days, probably for about 5 years. And so I had just lost a client. The company had stopped working with this agency. And I had planned on that for my revenue for the next 3 months. But as luck would have it, 2 days after I lost this gig, this guy called me and he's like, hey, I'm at a consultancy now, and we actually just had someone quit, and we have this big project that we're starting. It's very high profile. Would you be interested in doing it? And it seemed like a super awesome project. I get to travel every week and work in a very different environment, and then also paid double of what I was planning in my last job. And so I ended up doing that for 9 weeks and really learned just a ton. And it was just a super great opportunity that all stemmed from this random coffee 4 years earlier.
That's great. That's great. Yeah, you never know. I think that's sort of the theme, that who that person is that can maybe help you out, or you can help them out.
Yeah, and then again, the power of those weak connections.
Yeah. Yeah, well, we kind of heard some great stories on positive networking. And does anybody want to be vulnerable and maybe talk about, one of those networking nightmares or awkward moments and how you survived? Or is it still too traumatic now?
I think a lot of the most awkward ones are where you realize that someone's reaching out to you because they just want to get a job, and it's I don't know anything about you yet, and I don't really know how to vouch for you yet. So it's a lot of the common stories, I think, when it comes to negative is someone reach out to you, you don't know them at all, you think you're doing them a favor by hey, I'll meet with you, figure out what they're interested in learning, whatever, but it's oh, I just want to learn how to get a job from you. That's all that there is to it.
Yeah.
And I just try to grace my way through it and move on to, okay, time's up.
Yeah. Oh, was somebody else going to add something on that?
Yeah, I was going to add, as I've had similar experiences a lot. And just a general reminder that this is a relationship like any other kind of relationship. And just asking for something without building that relation and trust is I don't know how to put it. It feels kind of icky to
Yeah.
use a technical term.
Yeah.
And I'd say to talk to that point about just asking for referrals, I think there is a tactful way to do it. I think like giving people an out is definitely the way to go. And you can show up to this informational interview, and of course you're going to want a referral who doesn't want to just get into a company and get their resume seen. But if you come and just reach out, come prepared, come ready for a thoughtful discussion just about the company and the role, that's going to look a lot better. And you might even connect personally enough that they would just offer a referral. And you can always end the conversation by saying something like, oh, it was great talking to you about this. And what might there be, like, what next steps might there be? And that would be a good point where they can reach out and offer you a referral, but it doesn't force them into this awkward situation where they have to say, oh no, I don't really know you like that.
Yeah. I think it comes down to a lot of it is timing. And, even when people reach out to me or something and it's more about a job, I might know somebody that is hiring if I'm not. And it's a very fine line between being a little bit pushy and tactful. So, yeah.
I do have like a potential other one that I was I was a sidebar person for this one. So I was talking to a couple of people at a networking event, and one of them was a hiring manager. One was somebody who had clearly interviewed or applied for a job at the same company. And that person started challenging the hiring manager for, why didn't I get this job? I have all these things. I have everything you want. I've done this for this, high level person. And it's really, really awkward. And I just tried to slowly step away. I took a note of like, wow, this person is someone I would never want to hire. So I would want to try to avoid like ever having to work with this person at all, because they very much expect to be given a job because they have certain credentials, rather than it being about was the job the right fit for you. There's different things that people are looking for when there is an open role, and you just might not be exactly what the need is for that role,
Yeah. That's great. So Darren, I just want to dig in because, in your intro, when we introduced you, you kind of were a self-professed introvert, and you might have some tips and tricks for those that are listening, on networking or kind of getting out of your shell. We'd love to hear some of that.
Yeah, sure. So I think shyness around networking can come from a few different things. So there's a few different ways to tackle it. I don't know if people can tell that I'm a shy person. Internally, I definitely feel it. My first networking event, I definitely remember just being stuck in my car, panicking about like, what will I say to people? Everyone's more experienced than me. Like, what are they going to get from me? And I'm going to have to run around and talk to 20 people in an hour. And I think people early in their career, they have these similar worries. And so one big way, I think, to change your mindset about those things is, knowing what you can provide as someone who's earlier in their career. Because you might talk to some people who are senior, they have more experience, and you might think you're not offering anything, you're just taking from them and you're burdening them. So what you can think about when you're thinking about what others people can get out of it is that, people want to help. Some people, they enjoy it. Some people, they want to practice mentorship. And some people just want to pay it forward. So thinking of those things helps a lot.
Yeah.
I'd like to add on to that too, because Darren's clearly not alone. I think we've all experienced that feeling of sitting in your car or walking into a room and you don't know anyone. And like I mentioned before, I'm at an in-person networking thing at least once a week. And I'm outgoing, and I have all of the surface things of like, I don't mind walking into a room and talking to people. Even with all of that, I still get awkward and weird when I walk into a room when I don't know anybody. So I think it's just really normal to feel like that. I just want to let you know that I feel like that's really normal. And the thing I do is I just find one person to talk to, and I usually try to find another woman just because it just feels more comfortable to me to at least initiate a conversation. And then I always just ask them, tell me about you. I ask them about themselves. and that's it. And that just one little act of talking to one person will open up the whole evening for you, and everything will just, or coffee, if it's coffee or whatever, will just open up the whole thing. So I think it's really normal.
Yeah. Oh, that's great, Marcy. I like how you were asking somebody a question too. So it just, yeah, that's a great idea. So, I did a tiny bit of research on networking, and what is interesting, and you kind of heard the theme here, is there's strong and weak ties. And then there's also the concept of, we have a lot of just like me networks. So, and think about just like me networks are the people that you work with every day, kind of those operational people that, I know Tara because we work together, that sometimes I'll go, hey, do you have the link to this or something? Like she's one of my buddies at work or something. And then also the people that you might have gone to college with, they might be in your just like me network, they have the same sort of background. It might be your friends. What I'm interested in is, how do you get the diversity in your network? And how do you make sure that you don't just have that just like me network? I think, Marcy, you had kind of started it off earlier when we were having the conversation earlier.
Yeah, I'm on the leadership team for a networking group in San Diego, and we try to intentionally invite people that aren't all samesies, and that comes with experience, job, age is important to me. I want to have a variety of ages in this group, and so that's just what I do from a leadership team perspective. But I think it's really important to have kind of a broad spectrum of people in your network, and I think there's different ways to do that, and that's to be intentional, maybe thinking about, okay, who are the people or who are the roles or types of industries that I would love to like kind of add to my my network, and maybe really be intentional about trying to meet some of these people. And that's I think one way that you can be a little more diverse with your networking.
That's great. Tara, did you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, so I think like I found my way into UX because it felt like a like me kind of a network. So in my last job, not my last job, a couple of jobs ago, like I was in like a very broad role, and I could have gone so many different directions with my career. So I went to like front end developing, meetup events. I went to marketing meetup events, all these different creative meetup events. Eventually learned through that exploration what UX was, and found UX meetup events. And I was kind of feeling out the people in the industry to see like, are these the kind of people I want to work with? And there was something that just like felt really right with the UX community, but also with the stuff that I was learning at the events. So something about the just like me kind of led me into this role, for one thing. But I think even within UX, you meet people that have different, very, very diverse skills. And when it comes to like actually like you're in a job and now you have to hire another person to fill an open role, you like doing an analysis of like, okay, what skills do I have and what gaps do I have to fill? Finding those people that have different skills becomes very important then. And even within a company, like we get really siloed within our experience team or experience org. So like at all hands meetings for like all company, all hands, I talk about like how I like to do one-on-ones with different people and see who maybe is interested, or I look for people in other departments who have something I'm interested in learning about. And then I learn something that I can leverage from them and that they can leverage from me. So I guess that's kind of some of the ways that I'm diversifying, I guess. Yeah, a little bit of a balance, right?
Ben or Darren, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead.
So there's this guy I follow on LinkedIn named Daniel Abrams, who's he's like a viral writer. I think he's in like New Zealand, but he basically just posts a lot of kind of inspirational stuff all the time. And one thing he wrote last year was about basically like LinkedIn is not Facebook. It's for connections, not necessarily friends. And kind of encouraged, basically the post was like encouraging you to connect with people you might not know who like asked to connect with you. And I typically didn't do that before. If someone wrote me, I didn't know them, I would usually ignore it. But the last year I've been embracing this post because it really made sense. I mean, I will say I'm more likely still to connect with someone if they do spend a minute just to write a note, but it's definitely similar people like that like me network for the most part. But as Tara said, not everyone who's like a UX or like in the field is necessarily like the same as me. And so it's given me an opportunity to meet people, and I like connected with people all around the world and have, you know, little just like messages or like jumped on a quick call. But it's just been like a really great way to like expand my network by not saying no to people who I don't know in some way.
Yeah, that's great. Thanks, Ben. So I think you know, we're in this new hybrid world, and you know, there is a lot to be said about that personal connection, the face-to-face in person. How have you kind of evolved and, you know, in our ever-changing environment, because now we're going back into some of these things in person. What's some of your strategies, and, you know, how do you approach networking in this hybrid world?
Leverage
I'd
the
say,
chat.
oh, go ahead.
Sorry, leverage the chat. That's my number one. I try to do one-on-one Zoom coffee chats with a different person every single week. Sometimes I fall off on that, but I try to build it up. But if I just talk about the fact that I try to do that in an event like this, or in an all hands, whatever it, you know, if it's internal or external, I usually hear from somebody that they're interested in doing it too. And then I'm like, great, random person I can connect with that I probably wouldn't have connected with otherwise.
I agree. I think it's really great to do one-on-ones with people. And I used to do a lot of one-to-ones in person. And now that everybody's used to doing Zoom, I'm like, hallelujah. I don't want to go all over town meeting for coffee. So I love the hybrid option. But I will take the answer. I'm going to answer that question in a different way. I want to answer the hybrid of digital versus analog in that. I think I really love when I'm in person and people have business cards. I have a bunch here. And I think some of you might be thinking, oh my God, the 1990s called, they want their business cards back. Like, who uses business cards anymore? But I love business cards. And there's so many times I'm at an in-person networking event and people don't have them. And they're like, oh, I'll just add you to my phone. And I'm like, I don't really want you to put my personal information in your phone unless I know you.
Yeah.
Or they'll fumble and be like, oh, we can connect on LinkedIn. And there's just something, and I write on the cards. Like the girl that I met and she did product photography, I wrote on this card. Like I had a marker with me, product photography. So kind of like it's kind of like you, Tara. I got my pens and stuff. Or like if I want to follow up, I'll literally write on their card. So that's to me a hybrid of you know, it's a paper product, but then I'm going to go on LinkedIn and email and connect with them. So that to me is how I like to do hybrid networking.
That's great. That's great. How about you, Darren? Have you kind of evolved how you network in the last few years?
Yeah, I think a little bit. I think with remote networking, now that a lot of people are more having an online presence, I think a personal connection is the challenge, where you can reach out to literally anyone using LinkedIn, but to find some kind of connection where they're willing to see you as not just some random face on the internet asking you to do something for them. But so my strategy there has been, you know, looking at companies I'm interested in and finding some kind of connection with somebody who works there, whether it's people who are in my fraternity or an alumni of UCSD. Those kind of connections have been a lot more successful than just random messages.
That's great. Well, I think, you know, we can start maybe going to the questions that we have in the Slido. And one of the first ones that I see there is, do you have any tips for networking in mid to senior career? We have a lot more boot campers and fresh outs in the events I'm finding locally fun, but I'm not learning as much. So kind of any tips and tricks for somebody more senior in their career, or, you know.
I can jump in, I guess. thinking internally a lot, but you could easily do this externally. Like I am always interested in, like if I have a challenge that I'm dealing with, or maybe I'm interested in learning some new skill or something, if I find somebody that has like the role that knows that, that's a great like opener for, hey, I just want to learn something from you. And I feel like you are the right person who knows this thing or something like that. And then I do a lot of the one-on-ones. And that works really well for that, because then you have your talk topic for what you're going to talk about. It's not about I'm trying to get a job. It's a learning opportunity. And then you can go directly to those people that are in those like higher level positions and talk about specific challenges and stuff. A network is great for when you are facing challenges at work. That's what I often use my network for. Hey, I think you might be the person to talk to about this challenge. You want to meet for an hour? Can I buy you a coffee or whatever it is? So that would be my tip for that.
I might just, I know I'm the moderator, but I might just add that, at some point in my career, I started blogging and writing articles or something like that. And I think I had the confidence and the experience to tell other people about some level of my expertise. And that sort of helped me in my career. It helped me maybe get a couple of speaking opportunities and meeting people, but it was a little bit of a way of establishing what my knowledge was and then sharing it. And then, becoming a little bit of, I don't know if it's a thought leader, but, becoming an expert in some space. And it's always nice because I feel like when it comes to the diversity in your network, you never know what level is the best for you. Like, another thing was at some point in my career, I had an assigned mentor at the company that was an SVP. And it was just like, I always felt like I was taking too much of his time. So some point, like even having somebody high up in as a mentor or as somebody in a network, it's a little bit nerve wracking because it's like, okay, well, the president might be calling him or the CIO. So it's like, okay, why is he talking to me? So, at some point it's nice to connect with people from all different levels. Another question I see is when you diversify your network, how do you make that initial connection if you are from a different profession or background?
I think just make it about getting to know the person, having just the intention of saying, oh, I'd love to connect with you, and, initiate, just put it out there, and don't worry that you have different backgrounds. I think just, treat them like a human.
Yep. I love that. That's great.
Just to add to that, just remember, like, many people were in your boat at one time. They also might be moving from one career to another. And like, if that's the case, they're more likely to accept your invitation to connect with them.
Mm-hmm. I think also there's the opportunity to like just do a little bit of your own research to see what other opportunities there are to get to know people in that industry. Not if you're looking for a specific person, that's one thing. But one thing I've been interested in lately, which Darren's intro kind of made me think, oh, we have something to talk about. I got really interested in board game design, and I have a favorite board game designer. I started watching some of her fireside chats that were recorded and are on YouTube. And she mentioned something about local play testing events being super useful. So my plan now is in order to meet some local game designers, is to start going to play testing events, see how they do, see what they do, see if I can give any useful feedback, and then just have an opportunity to get to know people in that industry, because that's a thing that they do. And I honestly didn't know that existed until just a few weeks ago, because I was doing my research and I was like, oh, that sounds like a great opportunity. I bet there's a few play testing events in San Diego.
That's great. So we have a little bit of one on ethics and best practices, and I'm sure there's opinions. So it seems like everyone is on LinkedIn these days, and are we accepting everybody on LinkedIn? Sometimes this person said they get a lot of connection requests with no context. What do you think the professional protocol is?
Well, I can feel that one, as I was talking about a little before. I mean, for me, I'm relatively flexible. Like, I definitely prefer if someone writes. I have noticed there seems to be a lot of like collectors out there that just connect with people and then never interact with them. But I think in general, like best practice, if you're going to reach out to someone, use that little like thing when you add it, that you can add a little message and just say, hey, I'm curious about learning from you, blah, 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 whatever. But like really just that 1 minute to write a quick note makes a huge difference, at least in my opinion, of when I'm going to, if I'm going to hit, connect or decline.
That's great. Anybody else have their LinkedIn strategy or protocol?
I think on that note, a somewhat tangential subject, but I think leaving a message after you've met someone really helps with keeping that long-term connection, especially if you left like a good first impression. I think just saying something like, hey, it was great meeting you at SDXD. You left me with some great insights on unmoderated UX research sessions. Let's stay in touch. And just a brief message, and then years later, you'd be able to reach out to that person again, and they would remember based on your message that great interaction that you had the first day, like 3 years ago.
I definitely appreciate when I get oh, I saw you, I met you at this event. And then I'm like, oh, okay, because like, especially if you're networking a lot, which I'm sure Marcy can probably relate to, you see a lot of different people. And then it's like, wait, where did I meet this person? So that reminder is really useful. But an interesting way that I would kind of turn some of these things when I was like volunteering for SDXD, or especially when I was president, recruiters add you all the time, and they're always like kind of coldly recruiting you. Not always, but a lot of the time. But as a person with like an audience that they're interested in, I was able to turn that into a venue sponsor or a beverage sponsor or something like that. Like, oh, I'm not looking right now, but I have an audience for you. So if you do get involved with these types of volunteer groups, there's ways of leveraging those cold connections and making them useful.
I'm gonna go to one below the one about the Imagine, and hopefully we get a chance to do that one. But I heard that Marcy, you moved to San Diego 9 years ago. Ben, you've lived different places. So have I. How do you network in a new city or in a new career?
Well, I think it's changed. I mean, up until 3 years ago, I was mainly in person. Now, like most people, it's definitely more online, going to events like this, reaching out to people on LinkedIn. But I am hoping that it does kind of shift back. I have gone to a few in-person events and it's been great. But I think in general, it's just doing your research, finding events that are interesting to you, and also reaching out to your network and asking if they might know anyone in the city you're moving to who might be willing to connect you with to just learn about this new city. That's something I've done because I've lived in DC, LA, San Francisco twice, New York, and now San Diego. So I've done it a lot.
That's great. How about you, Marcy? When you moved here 9 years ago, how did you kind of make friends and make a network?
Yeah, well, I took a while for me to actually build a friend network. And that, I made friends. Some of them came from my networking community. I have a lot of really dear friends that I know now because I was out networking. So networking can lead to friends, which is a nice side benefit. But that was, physical in-person networking. I think it's a little bit more difficult to translate someone into a friend if you're only doing it on LinkedIn or something. But also just really doing things you enjoy. Like I enjoy yoga, so I became really active in my yoga studio, and that wasn't done with a networking intention, although I got to know people there and it did lead to connections. So it was sort of a side way in. So just doing things that you like to do, and also just putting yourself out there, just not being afraid to just go to networking things and showing up multiple times, because you're not going to just show up once and then expect to have these deep relationships. You really need to be consistent and keep showing up and keep giving and keep asking people how you can help them. And that's going to really ingratiate you to people as opposed to just asking them for things all the time.
Actually, when I first moved to San Diego, it kind of going full circle to the beginning of our conversation, I joined the Canadians in San Diego Club, and it was called Can Diego. And I think the icebreaker is gone because you'll kind of go, where in Canada are you from, or what school you went to? And we all got to know each other really well. And it was a great way to make friends and expand my network, and a diverse network, because they weren't people I worked with, although they were Canadian, but we were also displaced. So we just wanted to connect on that. Well, we are at time for the panel. I really want to thank Tara, Marcy, Darren, and Ben. You guys were awesome. It was great. Thank you, SDXD. And I think we're on to the networking part of the networking panel. So very meta.
Yeah, it's quite meta. Yeah, I mean, I think this is a great opportunity for maybe if something rang true to you, you could apply here, but mostly just to meet people. We have currently 50 attendees right now. So the plan here, I'll share my screen really quick. Okay.
And thank our moderator, Tina.
Oh, yes, and thank you. Yeah, no, thank you for our esteemed moderator, Tina. It was a great conversation. And thank you to our panelists, Darren. I love like all the like personal experiences you shared. I feel like a lot of people resonated with that. And yeah, like a lot of, I think for people that are maybe not as with networking, maybe it's not the first thing to think of, but I love how you framed it. Like it was very digestible and understandable. And I mean, Tara, what is there to say? Just always great stories. Ben, even crazier stories. And Marcy, I loved your perspective from your freelancing perspective to teaming up with other people. Definitely a perspective we needed here. And there's a lot of great feedback from you. So thanks a lot to all our panelists and moderator again. Okay, well, before we start the the networking session, well, I hope hopefully there was a lot to take away, and maybe some people have great memory or took great notes. And if you don't, we'll post the event in 2 weeks on our YouTube channel, and we'll post the link in the chat. Our YouTube channel has past event recordings. And so there's a lot of great stuff there too. So recommend that to check out. So, okay, let's move on to the networking activity. This is very simple. We're going to split everyone into breakout rooms, pair you with someone else. So just 2 people per breakout room if we can. Maybe there's going to be 3 in some. We'll see how much time we have. The initial plan is to do 4 sessions, 4 minutes each. And you can go through these topics or just introduce yourself and just talk. If the time ends and both of you didn't get a chance to introduce yourself within those 4 minutes, no worries. We'll bring you back. We'll split you up into a different breakout group, and you can go around there. So I think now we can just get started on that.